Hello students, good morning. And today's class is in continuation with the previous one, which is photosynthesis. We have studied about the definition of photosynthesis, then the location, exact location for the process of photosynthesis, which is the chloroplast, pigment responsible for the process, which is chlorophyll, green color pigment, and it absorbs the extreme ends of the visible spectrum. Then we have also studied about the opening and closing of stomata, which contains chloroplast to facilitate the process of photosynthesis. But today's class is in to study about the process of photosynthesis, then adaptations in the plants about to perform the function properly or to increase the process of photosynthesis. So various adaptations, then special mention about the steps taking place in the process, steps various steps, various chemical reactions takes place during the process of photosynthesis or to prepare the food, as making food is not so easy. You have seen your mothers cooking at home, so it is not very easy process. Here also plants are preparing food, but the process is a little bit complicated for the plants, but not for us. We have to study. So this process of photosynthesis, after that process we'll discuss about the end results, end products. What is the fate of end products formed in the process, during the process. So let's start with the first one, which is the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, it takes place, as you all have studied in the last class, that it takes place in chloroplast. And chloroplast, it contains two zones, which is the inner material, which is the stroma, and a pile or a stack of thylakoids. Thylakoids are single coin-like structures. Thylakoids are stacked one above the other to form the grana, and the granas are connected with the help of thread in the stroma. So all these structures, if you remember the structure, this one here, the single coin-like structure is the thylakoid. The complete stack, this complete stack is termed as the grana. Then this inner material, inside material, the granular substance is the stroma, and it is covered with, it is connected together by fret, or covered by a double membranous envelope, which is the double membranous envelope, outer end, inner envelope. So the process of photosynthesis takes place in the thylakoid as well as in the stroma. So which step takes place in the thylakoid? So the question for today's class is, first one, what is the location for the process of photosynthesis? What is the step which takes place in the thylakoid? Number 2. Then which step takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast? So 3 questions. Second, one more, which is write the process of photosynthesis. So let's start with the first question, which is the process of photosynthesis. Process of photosynthesis, the upper layers, the upper palisade cells, palisade parenchymatous cells, they absorb light energy in the form of photons. This light energy in the form of photons, this light energy is utilized to perform various chemical reactions at the end the food is prepared, the food or the glucose is prepared with the release of with the release of O2 as a byproduct. So this one, palisade cells, just next to the, if you remember the structure of leaf, we have drawn the LS of leaf, that upper epidermal layer. After upper epidermal layer, there were rectangular structures, that is the palisade cells, and these palisades are just next to the epidermis. The palisade cells which are closer to the epidermis, epidermal layer, and the cuticular layer, the outside cuticle, these are transparent, so they easily allow light to pass on to the palisade cells. In the palisade cells, the chloroplast is present. These chloroplasts absorb the light energy in the form of photons. The light energy absorbed in the form of photons is utilized for the various chemical reactions. This we'll study in the next step. Various chemical reactions, and after that the end product, which is the glucose, is formed. Glucose and oxygen is released as a byproduct of this reaction. Then byproduct of this reaction, it is some a part of oxygen. Some of the oxygen molecules are utilized by the plant for the process of respiration. During respiration, as all organisms take in oxygen, release out carbon dioxide. Similarly, in plants also, respiration process involves taking in of oxygen and releasing out of carbon dioxide. So the process of respiration is same in plants also, because students always get confused that human beings or the animals, they respire. During respiration they take oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, while plants, because we use the term that plants give oxygen, but the giving out of oxygen is not from by respiration, it is by the process of photosynthesis. End product of photosynthesis is oxygen, which is much more than the amount utilized by the plant for respiration. So therefore, this just mark always that plants use oxygen during respiration and release out carbon dioxide only. The process is same for plants also. Next is after this process of photosynthesis, second is the reactions. We have mentioned that various chemical reactions. So what are the chemical reactions? Let's start this one. This photosynthesis it involves two main processes, which is the various chemicals. Total 9 chemical reactions are there. Out of this, 2 are main, and this one, which is mentioned as light dependent and light independent. Light dependent phase involves activation of chlorophyll of many steps, which is the 9 steps total. 9 steps. Out of this, 2 we are mentioning: activation of chlorophyll and photolysis of water. Photolysis of water. Here, this phase is the biosynthetic phase. Biosynthetic phase or the dark phase. So let's discuss this one first. Light dependent phase. Light dependent phase, it during this process, the energy absorbed by the palisade cells is in the form of photons. This photons of energy is utilized for the activation of chlorophyll or activation of chlorophyll pigment. The first step of this is activation of chlorophyll. After activation, there is photolysis of water. When the photons of energy which is used for activating this chlorophyll pigment is utilized for breaking down the water molecule. Water molecule In photolysis, 2H2O utilizes 4 photons of light energy to form 4H positive, 4 electrons and oxygen molecule. This one. So this is a complete process for the photo, and this is termed as photolysis. Photo means light, lysis means breaking, breakdown of water in the presence of light, breakdown of water in the presence of light. Photolysis. Now this two water molecules utilizes 4 photons of energy to form 4 hydrogen ions, 4 electrons and oxygen. Now what is the fate of these end products, or this products formed during this process? What is the fate? This H positive is utilized to convert NADP into NADPH. H positive is utilized to convert NADP into NADPH. NADP is nicotinamide diphosphate, nicotinamide diphosphate into nicotinamide diphosphate hydrogenase, NADPH. So this H is utilized here. Next is the electrons. The 4 electrons released during this process, the 4 electrons is utilized to convert ADP into ATP by adding one phosphate molecule. ADP gets added with one phosphate molecules with the help of these 4 electrons and gets converted to ATP. ADP is adenosine diphosphate, ATP adenosine triphosphate. Next, last step is the O2 or oxygen molecule. Oxygen molecule is released out. This O2 molecule, some of this oxygen molecule is utilized by the plant for respiration. The extra amount, the amount which is excessive from which is not used by the plant is released out in the atmosphere for being utilized by the other organisms. Then next is the light dependent phase. Light dependent phase, which is the biosynthetic phase or the dark phase. I am rubbing this portion. Biosynthetic phase, dark phase is a misnomer for this phase. It doesn't take place in takes place in darkness or during night time. Since it does not utilize light energy, so it is termed as dark phase. Otherwise, it is a phase which is dependent on the some chemicals or the substances formed during light dependent process, but directly it is not dependent on light energy. So light independent phase or the biosynthetic phase, it takes place in the absence of light energy, or it is not not utilizing light energy for the process to take place, but the process occurs during the daytime only. This one, biosynthetic phase. In this, one more thing, light dependent phase takes place in the thylakoids. The place, location, thylakoid of chloroplast, the single coin-like structure, thylakoid. In the outer thin membrane of the thylakoid is the location for the light dependent process. While in this light independent, the stroma, the granular substance of the chloroplast, the stroma is the location for the biosynthetic phase of photosynthesis. So it takes place in stroma. Dark phase here. In the dark phase, the chemicals are utilized and the chemicals formed during the first step or the light dependent phase are further proceeded and glucose is formed. Glucose is formed during this process. This glucose, it may be utilized by the plant directly or at the same time, but the rate of consumption is not as much as the rate of production of glucose. So for the time being, it may be stored as starch, which is a polymer. So the term for converting glucose into starch is termed as polymerization. Now, but in some plants the glucose is converted to sucrose, which is a disaccharide. Saccharin word is for sugar. Two molecules of sugar together. Monosaccharide, single unit of sugar. Glucose, which is the monosaccharide. Two units of glucose together. It forms a disaccharide. Di means two. Disaccharin, sugar molecules or sugar content. This one disaccharide. Then in some cases the glucose may be stored as, may be converted into proteins, or for the synthesis of proteins and fats, or the other substances formed by the plant. So it may be utilized or to may get converted to these forms. So this is all about the light dependent and light independent processes. After that there is a mention about adaptation. The first steps. Now for the adaptation, the question is, mention the various adaptation in plants and what is the utility of these adaptation, whether it is enhancing the process of photosynthesis or it reduces the process of photosynthesis. So you have to mention any of the, if it is mentioned already, the large surface area, what is the use of this in plant, or what is the role of this type of adaptation. So this we'll discuss about these all topics. Large surface area first. Surface area. It facilitates maximum light absorption. But in some plants the leaves are narrow. But narrowing of leaves is not concerned with photosynthesis or reducing photosynthesis. Narrow leaves is to reduce transpiration. Transpirational loss is more harmful for the plant. So the leaves are narrow to reduce transpiration, not to reduce photosynthesis. To enhance photosynthesis, the broad surface area or the large surface area of leaf is to enhance or to maximize the process of photosynthesis. Then leaf arrangement. If the leaves are perpendicular to the light falling on it, then the maximum light intensity it is getting. But if the light it requires less light intensity, or the plants need minimum light or optimum light, then the position of light is just diagonal to the light falling on it. Diagonal, or just to 45 degrees or 60 degrees, not perpendicular. So when it is not perpendicular, it is just the leaf position of leaf is to 45 or 60 degree with comparison to the light falling on the leaf, then it is just to minimize or to optimize the light intensity. Then cuticle and upper epidermis. After leaf arrangement, it must be perpendicular to the light for maximum light intensity falling, or to maximize photosynthesis. Then cuticle and upper epidermis. Cuticle and upper epidermis are transparent and waterproof, and these layers easily allow light to pass up to the palisade cells. So this layer transparent and waterproof to allow passage of light up to the palisade cell. Then numerous stomata. Numerous stomata. This facilitates easy diffusion of gases. As gases, carbon dioxide, diffusion of carbon dioxide is required during the process of photosynthesis, or it is the raw material for the process of photosynthesis. So easy diffusion is facilitated by numerous stomata. As you know that in the atmosphere the CO2 concentration is high in the atmosphere, so it diffuses easily to inside the leaf or inside the stomata, which is at low concentration. And so diffusion, which is always from diffusion or osmosis, both are always from high to low. So high concentration in the atmosphere to low concentration in leaves. It easy diffusion takes place, and if the number of stomata is more, so diffusion is facilitated. Then next is thinness of leaves. Thinness of leaves. Thinness of leaves helps in, if the leaf surface is thin, then the transportation process would be easier from stomata to the palisade cells, the diffusion of gases from the palisade, again the release of water molecule, or the from here the veins may help in the transportation of food. So this easy transportation, translocation of substances from the mesophyll cells to the phloem, or from the phloem to the mesophyll is easier. It is facilitated by thin leaves, thinness of leaves. Then next is the chloroplast. Chloroplast. More is the chloroplast, more photosynthesis. Chloroplast is the main food factories. So more chloroplast, more photosynthesis. Then next is the extensive vein system. Extensive vein system. Extensive vein system, suppose this one, what does it do? This one, extensive vein system helps in easy translocation of material to and fro from the phloem or to the mesophyll cells. Mesophyll and phloem, which is interconnected, the veins connect these two areas, the mesophyll of leaf and the phloem, for the translocation of food formed in the mesophyll to the other parts, and to draw water from xylem up to the leaf. So this easy distribution of substances is facilitated by extensive vein system. Then next is the end result, which is glucose, water and oxygen. Glucose, the end product glucose which is formed, it may be stored, it may be utilized for the by the plant, or for the time being it may be utilized, or but the excess of glucose, it is stored in the form of starch by polymerization, or forms a disaccharide sucrose, or it may be utilized in the formation of proteins and other substances. It may be translocated. After this, and when there is requirement of this glucose during night time, it is translocated by the phloem to the in the dissolved form to other parts of the plant. Translocation in dissolved form only. Translocation in dissolved form, dissolved with water. form. During night time this happens. Then water, the excess of the water which is released out as a process 6CO2 plus 12H2O with the help of chlorophyll and sunlight as a catalyst, it forms C6H12O6 plus 6O2 as the byproduct and 6H2O also. This H2O, excess of water, it may be utilized again during the process of photosynthesis or in continuation with the process of photosynthesis. Then last is the oxygen. Some of the oxygen is utilized by the plant, while the excess of oxygen is released out to the atmosphere to be utilized by other organisms. Then one more thing I have not mentioned here, that between these two phases, light dependent and light independent phases, the time gap is very less, that is 1/1000 of a second. So the time gap is very less between the two successive phases of light dependent, light independent processes. Thank you for today's class.